John climbed the steps slowly, trying not to think that this might be the last time ever. Ghost padded silently beside him. Outside, snow swirled through the castle gates, and the yard was all noise and chaos. But inside the thick stone walls, it was still warm and quiet, too quiet for John's liking. He reached the landing and stood for a long moment, afraid. Ghost nuzzled at his hand. He took courage from that. He straightened and entered the room. Lady Stark was there beside his bed. She had been there day and night for close to a fortnight. Not for a moment had she left Bran's side. She had her meals brought to her there, and chamber pots as well, and a small hard bed to sleep on, though it was said she had scarcely slept at all. She fed him herself the honey and water and herb mixture that sustained life. Not once did she leave the room, so John had stayed away. But now there was no more time. He stood in the door for a moment, afraid to speak, afraid to come closer. The window was open. Below, a wolf howled. Ghost heard and lifted his head. Lady Stark looked over. For a moment, she did not seem to recognize him. Finally, she blinked. "What are you doing here?" she asked in a voice strangely flat and emotionless. "I came to see Brand," John said, "to say goodbye." Her face did not change. Her long auburn hair was dull and tangled. She looked as though she had aged 20 years. "You've said it, now go away." Part of him wanted to flee, but he knew that if he did, he might never see Brand again. He took a nervous step into the room. "Please," he said. Something cold moved in her eyes. "I told you to leave," she said. "We don't want you here." Once that would have sent him running. Once that might even have made him cry. Now it only made him angry. He would be a sworn brother of the Night's Watch soon, and face worse dangers than Catelyn Tully Stark. "He's my brother," he said. "Shall I call the guards?" "Call them," John said, defiant. "You can't stop me from seeing him." He crossed the room, keeping the bed between them, and looked down on Bran, where he lay. She was holding one of his hands. It looked like a claw. This was not the Bran he remembered. The flesh had all gone from him. His skin stretched tight over bones like sticks. Under the blanket, his legs bent in ways that made John sick. His eyes were sunken deep into the black pits, open, but they saw nothing. The fall had shrunken him somehow. He looked half a leaf, as if the first strong wind would carry him off to his grave. Yet under the frail cage of those shattered ribs, his chest rose and fell with each shallow breath. "Bran," he said, "I'm sorry I didn't come before. I was afraid." He could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks. John no longer cared. "Don't die, Bran. Please. We're all waiting for you to wake up. Me and Robb and the girls and everyone." Lady Stark was watching. She had not raised a cry. John took that for acceptance. Outside the window, the dire wolf howled again. The wolf that Bran had not had time to name. "I have to go now," John said. "Uncle Benji is waiting. I'm to go north to the wall. We have to leave today before the snows come." He remembered how excited Bran had been at the prospect of the journey. It was more than he could bear, the thought of leaving him behind like this. John brushed away his tears, leaned over, and kissed his brother lightly on the lips. "I want him to stay here with me," Lady Stark said softly. John watched her, weary. She was not even looking at him. She was talking to him. But for a part of her, it was as though he were not even in the room. "I prayed for it," she said dully. "He was my special boy. I went to the Sept and prayed 7 times to the 7 faces of God that Ned would change his mind, leave him here with me. Sometimes prayers are answered." John didn't know what to say. "It wasn't your fault," he managed after an awkward silence. Her eyes found him. They were full of poison. "I need none of your absolution, bastard." John lowered his eyes. She was cradling one of Bran's hands. He took the other, squeezed it. Fingers like the bones of a bird. "Goodbye," he said. He was at the door when she called out to him. "John," she said. He should have kept going, but she had never called him by his name before. She turned to find her looking at his face as if she were seeing it for the first time. "Yes," he said. "It should have been you," she told him. Then she turned back to Bran and began to weep, her whole body shaking with the sobs. Jon had never seen her cry before. It was a long walk down to the yard. Outside, everything was noise and confusion. Wagons were being loaded, men were shouting, horses were being harnessed and saddled and led from the stables. A light snow had begun to fall. Everyone was in an uproar to be off. Robb was in the middle of it, shouting commands with the best of them. He seemed to have grown of late, as if Bran's fall and his mother's collapse somehow made him stronger. Grey Wind was at his side. "Uncle Ben is looking for you," he told Jon. "He wanted to be gone an hour ago." "I know," Jon said. "Soon." He looked around at all the noise and confusion. "Leaving is harder than I thought." "For me too," Robb said. He had snow in his hair, melting from the heat of his body. "Did you see him?" Jon nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "He's not going to die," Robb said. "I know it." "You Starks are hard to kill," Jon agreed. His voice was flat and tired. The visit had taken all the strength from him. Robb knew something was wrong. "My mother? She was very kind," Jon told him. Robb looked relieved. "Good," he smiled. "The next time I see you, you'll be all in black." Jon forced himself to smile back. "It was always my color."